Well, first of all, I went back and looked at birth dates for our seniors, and there are 10 who were born before September 11th. They were babies. So we are working with a blank slate. None of our children were alive. All they know is what they've seen on YouTube, or if they've read anything. And so it gives us the opportunity to teach not necessarily the events, although those are important. That's not what I want to focus on, and I don't think that's what the rest of our teachers want to focus on. We would rather focus on the people that it impacted and it continues to impact. We're going to write somewhere over 10,000 names next Wednesday. And the majority of them are servicemen and women who've died in the global war on terror. And so this gives us the opportunity to teach not just about the events of 9/11, but also the sacrifice that men and women have made and are continuing to make to ensure nothing like that ever happens again. September 11, 2001, I was actually teaching 6th grade physical science, and my middle son, Zachary, was actually in my classroom. My wife, Karen, emailed me and said, and again, that's in the early days of email, but she emailed me and said a plane had hit the Twin Towers, and I thought, it's a commuter plane, it's no big deal. And then she emailed me a little later and said another one had hit, and that's when I and, probably the nation realized something was up. And so I was able to tune in to WMAZ, Channel 13 News, and we were able to watch events as they unfolded. And it was interesting being with 6th graders. They were terrified. I had one little boy that came up to me and just dissolved into tears and said, are they going to come and get us too? And I remember just grabbing him and hugging him and telling him, not if I can help it. They won't do that.
2001, I was actually a high school teacher at Mainland High School in Daytona Beach, Florida. I was actually teaching health education during that time period out in my portable classroom, kind of a distance away from the school. And I remember one of our campus advisors came in and he said, "A plane has just hit the World Trade Center. You need to turn your TV on." So, of course, we all flip our televisions on thinking, hey, somebody got off course, something weird has happened. And as we are turning it on, we're in the course of watching this, the second plane hit. And that's when I think all of us kind of had the realization of this was not accidental. Something is going on that none of us could have predicted, and certainly we didn't expect. And then as the news started to unfold, all of our educational plans for the day were kind of thrown out the window, and all of these high school students kind of sat there with us, just entranced by the television screen as we were trying to figure out what was going on and what did that look like. And then, of course, all the news reports of everything happening around the country and everything shutting down. It actually hit home pretty closely for us because our woman who worked at the front desk, her son actually worked at the World Trade Center, and he was one of the upper floors. So to know that that had happened to him just kind of really put a very somber note over the rest of the campus. And that's one we certainly have never forgotten.
I'd just flown into Puerto Rico because I was a training support battalion commander at the time, and we were going down to train some soldiers down in Puerto Rico. My team had gotten down there, and we had gotten there on Sunday. This was Monday morning. We basically get in there, and I'd already gone for my run that morning. Got in on about 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and turned on CNN, was watching the news and all that stuff, and then I saw that something had happened with the first attack, and then the second attack happened, and I absolutely watched it occur right before my eyes. I was very impressed with what took place in terms of the countries coming together. We've got our problems, but I'll tell you, when it comes down to the United States having to do what they need to do to protect this country, the American people come together.
And I had just gotten to my national security policy class, and the professor wheeled in the TV cart, and he had on the news, and we were watching. What had just happened was the first plane had just hit the tower, and we were watching as the second plane hit, and then the buildings came down. And I remember feeling that it was really great because it was so terrifying, and none of us had ever seen anything like that before, and it was really comforting to have the national security professor there, because he knew so much about what was going on and was able to walk us through it. And I remember class ended and we all just stayed there watching. And then they canceled classes for the rest of the day, and we all still stayed there watching together. We still talk about it today. The people I was in that class with, we still talk about it today. It was so upsetting, and it was like nothing that had ever happened.
I remember being in fall registration, and we had students. This is when we saw students down here in Parham Hall, and I remember not knowing anything for probably 45 minutes. And then students started coming in and telling us what had happened, so we all were like trying to watch and see students keep doing our job. And my mom was at the time in Atlanta in school. My brother was in DC at the time and working, and I remember being scared because I couldn't get in touch with them, either one of them. So I just remember that day being horrified that somebody attacked the USA, and I mean, it's just beyond comprehension of somebody attacking us.
I was getting ready for a job interview and preparing myself, and I'm watching the news and watching the planes go into the building and actually watching our lives change as Americans. I was back in that time, I was flying a lot, going in and out of airports, and I remember how it changed our lives forever. My children were very small. I could not explain it to them. I was also a youth pastor at the time. And it just changed our lives in an instant. And people don't realize how impactful those few moments were to America.
On September the 11th, 2001, I worked at the Georgia War Veterans Home. On that day, I was taking the census from my building to another building, but I had to go through Vinson Building where there's a TV in the lobby. On my way back, I saw smoke coming out of a building, and I asked the veteran, I said, "What happened?" And he said, "Smoke is coming out. A plane just hit that building." And so I went back. I really didn't think that much of it, to tell you the truth. And so I went back to my office, and a girl walked in and she said, "Another plane just hit the World Trade Center." And I said, "Was that the World Trade Center?" And she said, "Yes." And then a few minutes later, she came in and said that a plane had just hit the Pentagon. And I said, "Somebody's after us." And so after all was said and done, 3 days later, the veteran that told me that a plane had just hit that building, 3 days later after the attack, he passed away.
I remember being in 6th grade. We were about to start the day in my 6th grade English class, and my teacher had taken a cell phone call, something she never did, in the hallway. And when she came in, she was crying profusely, and that phone call would have been her son, who was in the AT&T Tower in Atlanta, a place they thought would be the next target. So she came in and did her best to explain to 11-year-olds what had occurred. Of course, we didn't understand the significance of that. But as we went throughout the day, I remember you could hear a pin drop in the whole school. You have a school full of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and you could hear a pin drop. It was silent. I remember watching the news. I remember seeing George Bush atop the rubble when he was holding the megaphone, addressing the world of what we were going to do as Americans. And at 11 years old, that's when I really realized what patriotism and what America stood for.
As a member of the New York Army National Guard, I certainly understood that my day was about to change. I wasn't so sure about my life, but I knew that there was a good chance, being a public affairs soldier, that I was going to be mobilized in somewhere around New York City. It was very surreal. It was nothing that I could have ever imagined occurring on U.S. soil. Even 6 days, 5 days after, whatever it was, that it still hadn't set in that somebody had the gumption to attack the United States of America. And you saw a community that was reeling, but you saw a community that was very supportive of the efforts that were taking place. And it was very awe-inspiring to see the dedication that these men and women just worked hours and hours and hours looking, listening for any type of hope.
I was stationed in Hawaii, serving as the Deputy Operations Officer for the entire Pacific region. And got a call from my operations center, woke me up in the middle of the night and said, "Hey, a plane just hit one of the Twin Towers." And I said, "Anything of significance?" They said, "No, first report just coming in, a plane's been hit." I hung the phone up, laid back down, sat there and thought about it for a while, when the phone would ring again. And this time they said, "Another plane has hit the other tower." And at that point we realized something was going on. So we quickly mobilized and brought the entire team in and stood up the Operations Center in the Pacific and went into full combat operations. As a general officer, being the second responsible for every operational thing going on in the entire Pacific, everything around China, Japan, Korea, Philippines, the entire area. We took this very, very seriously, and we're trying to find any possible links with other terrorist groups that might do something in that region too, against American forces, bases, planes, ships, anything we had out there. Everybody took a real loss that day. And when that occurs, you want us all to remain vigilant and also never forget the sacrifice that they ultimately made, all those military and civilian members that day.